Hello, I'm Ruben Bressler. Welcome back to the sideboard here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm here with Tyler Tyssedal.
Yep.
Good to have you here.
Thanks for
having me. You have an
me.
exciting, fun-looking deck here. We saw on camera earlier. I guess it would be Mist Hollow Chain, Food,
Yep,
Griffin.
something in there. Yeah, Griffin Chain, I don't know.
So explain the combo to the folks at home.
Yeah, so the combo works with the enchantment Food Chain and having Mist Hollow Griffin. You can cast Mist Hollow Griffin from exile, and then basically what you do is you remove a creature to get 4 mana to play Mist Hollow Griffin, and then you can play the Mist Hollow Griffin and then remove it, netting 1 mana each time. So you
can only cast creatures.
Yes, it can only cast creatures. So like a lot of the deck is creature based,
Sure.
to take advantage of that. But that's the way of getting the unlimited mana. Then we have Fierce Empath that will fetch up any creature 6 or bigger. So I have 3 of those in here. I have Aether Snipe, Gristlebrand, and Emrakul. Emrakul's
for various purposes.
Yes.
The Emrakul is the actual win condition.
Yep.
Aether Snipe gets rid of troublesome permanents.
Yep.
For example, I would say Ensnaring Bridge.
Yes, Ensnaring Bridge, even Choke sometimes, like if I need to get around that. You see a lot of time with Maverick too, you have Pride Mage. You kind of really don't want a Pride Mage on board when you're trying to win with an enchantment.
And you also have Gristlebrand, which is fairly obvious,
Yep.
but it just gets you more.
It does, and there's a really neat trick you can do if you don't have infinite mana. And what you do is if you have a Food Chain on board and a Mana Dork, whatever, and then you play the Fierce Empath, you take the target for the Fierce Empath, grab the Aether Snipe, then you remove one of your Mana Dorks to evoke the Aether Snipe, target the Fierce Empath, remove the Aether Snipe for, what is that, 7 green, recast the Fierce Empath, grab a Gristlebrand, remove the Fierce Empath for black, play the Gristlebrand.
Get the Gristlebrand. Wow, that's pretty tricky.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of ways to just dig in to your combo. You've got Brainstorm, Ponder. You even have a Jace.
Yep.
But you've also got a backup plan. You've got sort of a beatdown plan that I saw you employ a couple times with your Vendilion clicks and your random 1/1s and 2/2s. Is that how you win a lot of the time?
You know, a lot of the time, like if the combo gets interrupted, you can still beat down. When I go into the sideboard, I usually bring in some Tarmogoyfs and a Scavenging Ooze just to kind of go on this really mediocre, like blue-green mid-range.
Sure. So speaking of the sideboard, you mentioned Tarmogoyf and Scavenging Ooze, which is sort of your beatdown plan in case that your opponents are running just way too much hate for you.
Yep. And most people do side out removal as well.
Sure.
So you kind of have, like, because Swords to Plowshares is not very good against Griffin. So.
So, yeah, I can see that. So you've also got some unique choices. A lot of the cards are self-explanatory, but you also have a Flusterstorm, which has sort of been coming back into Legacy. It disappeared for a little while. It's real popular in Vintage.
Yeah.
What matchups are those for? Is that
Flusterstorm? It acts as, a lot of the times in the matchups where you want more counter spells, it acts as like the Spell Pierce plus. Like sometimes, usually, like you have a counter war and it goes off, but it really comes into handy against Storm or anything that builds up that Storm count. Because sometimes you have a really aggressive Storm player, they go through, they don't really worry about you countering every single one of their Storm the tendrils, and you just boom, you hit it with a Flusterstorm. So that's kind of a nice way of divvying that up.
Now, another important card you have in your sideboard, it seems to me, is Pithing Needle.
Yes.
A lot of the things that you want to be that impact you. You can Pithing Needle.
Yes.
So give a couple examples.
So Quasali Pride Mage would be the main one, because anybody who can Zenith for Pride Mage, like at any time in the game, you don't want to run out that Food Chain, because sometimes you need 2 turns to go off. A lot of times you can do it in 1 turn, but sometimes you need 2. So Food Chain's really good against blue-white. Putting that in against their top is really effective. And then you've got even just the more, like any Planeswalker too, especially if you're playing against like Nick Fit and they bring in Liliana, you throw that down because that you don't want to be discarding cards.
Sure.
So.
Now, one interesting thing to note about Food Chain is it is a mana ability.
Yes.
And earlier today, I saw someone try to disenchant your Food Chain in response, which you can't do.
Yeah.
And so not only is the combo effective, but it's also sneaky, and people don't really know how it works.
And
people have forgotten about the card Food Chain.
Yes.
So
and they've also Pithing Needled it too.
Which also doesn't
do anything. I tell them after the match, I'm like, just so you know, because you can legally do that. I was like, just so you know, that doesn't actually
do anything.
Stop it.
Exactly.
But I'll take the free Pithing Needle out there.
So what are the matchups like? Like you play against. So I'll give you a rundown of the 3 decks that you expect to see most in Legacy. Maverick, Sneak and Show, and Rug Delver.
Yeah. So Maverick is actually a pretty favorable matchup. If you play against a really good Maverick player, like sometimes they know how to play around things and they just runner. Like you get choked out and you're like, well, I didn't see that one coming. But usually it's not a bad matchup. I bring in the Gilded Drakes against them because sometimes it's really nice to have another way of taking the Pride Mage or the Knight of the Reliquary. But Karakas, you actually don't care about Karakas at all because usually you're casting Emrakul off of unlimited mana. So you cast Emrakul, get your extra turn online, they'll Karakas it, you can just recast it, or yeah, like that's...
And then just attack for 3 with Griffins.
Yes, exactly. So like, Maverick's pretty favorable, the removal's not very effective, but I did at Gen Con in the Legacy Champs, I played against a Maverick player who somehow brought in gut shots, and he was kind of like hesitant about it, but he pinged off all my bodies, like played Noble Hierarch. Killed it. Like he just kept me like a turn behind each turn. So sometimes that happens.
And what about Sneak and Show?
Sneak and Show, with the whole Omniscience thing, Omniscience is like makes that deck like a lot better. I feel because you can't do the conventional things. Like I had like you can mulligan or Fierce Empath for your Gristlebrand or Emrakul and be okay with a Show and Tell. But then they either have, Sneak Attack or the Omniscience. But I do bring in Gilded Drake just because that does help. That's kind of a 50-50.
Sure. And lastly, we saw on camera you played against Rug Delver.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that matchup.
The Rug Delver matchup's actually not too bad. Sometimes you do get the opponent with the turn 1 Delver that flips and then just
counters everything.
Yeah.
That's what they do sometimes.
Yes, and that does happen. But usually, like, honestly, I play at the Monster Den in Minneapolis every Thursday, and I probably have like an 80% win, like just record there.
Nice.
And we have like Ryan Overturf.
Sure.
He plays there every week. But it's not too bad. Usually what you do in the sideboard is you side out the forces, you side out the cute stuff, the Aether Snipe and the Gristlebrand, and you go down on kind of other things, and you kind of become like that mid-range aggro deck, and you're kind of looking for the beatdown path that way.
Sure.
Just because you still have the combo in the deck, but you have like an alternate like route to take. Right. And I leave in the Jace because the Jace is really good against Rug. Well, they probably will waste all their bolts on your Mana Dorks the whole game.
Now, you've written about this deck before.
Yes.
Tell the folks at home where you can research that.
That's at quietspeculation.com. I forget what the article is titled. If you go on there and search...
If you look up his name, you can find it on that website. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
When this Hollow Griffin came out, people were excited about this deck, and people didn't really play it, but here it is if you want to try it for yourself.